The wielder must die before
wielding it.
But, I objected.
Yes, it's tricky. Too tricky for you, as I already said. Too expensive.
Then the man with no arms led me back among the tiny and wavering swords. These cost a breath you may never take again. Those, a feeling you may never shape again. Then his lashes quivered daintily.
Beware, though, as all are double-edged and come with this warning.
Should a wound ever fail,
you
will vanish.
like the blade.
You wield. But I didn't care.
What about the 50-year sword?
Your sword? His violet lashes twitching.
Slyly.
I could not object. I knew too it was my sword. I knew.
When the handle melted beneath my fingers and the blade shivered
familiarly along my arm and into my past. Yes, how much is my sword? A memory you have, which would have
outlived
you. And before I had even finished saying agreed, the man
with no arm somehow already
held clenched
between his teeth the handle of a sword with a blade which swayed
like a long blade of evening grass. Just as quickly, too, he slid behind
me, and I felt a sting between
my shoulder blades, and then a fire and a cold and a sudden something.
Seep of hurt. And then my eyes dried up, and they also hurt.
There! Blinked the man with no arms, happily showing me what was now
separate, suspended carefully
in the air.
A single
harvester
with dark orange
wings struck through with light and dapples of bruised dark.
What is it? I wanted to know.
But his violet lashes flickered, as if now to say
no.
And he boxed up my 50-year sword and never said more.
And so I descended the mountain of
any one paths crossing back through the forest of
no, before finally making my way
away from the valley
assault.
And only in the years to come would I realize what
he had taken.
My heart stayed just
as black and my badness spread
more easily, but
the memory
and reason
behind such blackness and badness had vanished completely.
Which is my
story.
There is
no more. And even if the story
helped teller had indeed
cut himself short,
which it seemed to Chintana he had, he gave
no indacitation, only hunching his shoulders and
lowering his eyes with a sigh.
A sight so soaked with sadness, even the orphans
responded to it.
Chintana knew better, though.
She listened instead to her chest,
which guarded a more subtle ear, and she
acceptated the sharpening
shrill of her thumb. For even as the social worker snored now in her recliner, and the storyteller seemed to recomport himself into an even smaller stillness,
Chintana knew what the orphans
were about to ask, which somehow meant she also knew.
He too knew what they would ask and how he would answer. In fact, the only thing Chintana did not know was how she herself would respond.
At least get up, she tried to tell herself, but though
already on the edge of her seat, as in
the poison of a dream, she felt unable to move even an itsy bit. Tarf grunted then, refusing,
unable
to look away from the long
box with its angles of black, and so asking, "Is that the sword?"
And of course, all 5 windows
were open now, and the wind had fallen.
Clouds
split apart with falling
hail ripped
into the room, and the 5
flames on fire,
wicks on fire,
candles of molasses,
cloves,
nutmeg,
cinnamon, and ginger shook and faltered, but no one there could heed the candles
anymore, or understand them.
Shadows are hither,
Notes or follow the paths.
Not even Chintana, who try as she might, could still not wrench herself free. And so Tarf did as he was told,
lifting the first latch. And so Izay did as he was told,
lifting the second latch.
And so Enidia did as she was told,
lifting the third latch. And so Sithis did as he was told,
lifting the fourth latch.
And so Mika did as she was told,
lifting the last latch.
And then all withdrew Scarf immediately objected. It's empty!
Yeah! Izard and Nadia.
And Sithis chorused. Mickett even giggled.
The weight is missing. But the story
Till his lack of
Surprise reminded them.
as he quietly reached in to pull free the finely carved handle.
bound in fall braid and beat it with winks of pale pearl.
In fact, so mesmerized was everyone by the promise of its
Mild bend. No one seemed to notice how the storyteller was already standing.
Filling the room, his shoulders expanding out to the wall.
The back of his neck pressing up against the ceiling.
All of him.
growling and gawking.
His shadow falling not from, but towards the terrified
Candlelight where
Upon
he began to swing the handle in a wide but deliberately
slow
arc as if to pass a long blade through the wicks of those 5
candles nearly 6 feet away, where indeed a yellow panic there,
and perhaps by extraordinary coincidence momentarily cowered to small rounds of blue and drowning smoke. How his lips gleamed sharp
red then, as gripping
the handle with
both hands, he raised it high above his head,
twisting his shoulders away,
though never relinquishing his gaze,
fixed
awfully
on the orphans.
still seated at his feet.
Instinctively, Tafferty's out, jerked their arms up in front of their faces.
And Nadia yelped, Sithis leaked out a whine.
The Mickett wailed.
Chitana forced herself in from her chair, but she was
Too hard to.
Oh, so very, very too.
Laid the
Till
story.
him already swinging down and across the necks of the 5
A
orphans.
vicious and terrible round.
with even worse implications if his hands hadn't clutched.
Nothing at all.
For indeed,
At the height of their ruin,
yet before their crime,
They,
those hands.
pale as February, had been
so seamlessly so, and so expertly so,
stripped clean.
replaced with a ladle of angry air.
Tripe, hogwash, baloney, and hooey.
Belinda Kite spat loudly, striding forward, the handle now
Somehow miraculously.
in her possession. How easily, too, it seemed she had just reached
Out of the shadows and plucked free from his glacial grasp.
the end of his story.
Despite herself, Chintana was
Overjoyed, even if she also wondered what on earth could have prompted such a display of uncommon heroics. Had some protective instinct
Suddenly necessitated she act on behalf of the orphans, or was it just more evidence of
Belinda Kite's natural predisposition to spoil.
a pretty gripping moment.
Whatever the case, she now dangled.
mercury?
Handle between her 2 very nimble fingers.
It's time to cut out such doo-doo.
Look closely, my children. This is nothing but a bit of phony foodie.
Whereupon Belinda Kite
To further substantiate her claim,
Proceeded to swing and
to no effect.
stab, gash, cross,
Flame, chop, slash, hew, pare, lop,
perforate, puncture, slit.
pierce asunder and jab the
and
At herself, all over herself, around herself, across, through, making
sure to cross her knees, thighs,
and waist, dice the fingers, wrists,
elbows and arms, sectioning,
filleting and
lancing neck, jaw,
nose,
ears, and
scalp, a complete hacking and desiccating of her body.
entire, no part of her uncut, untouched, or
unmitigated.
And everyone there, though
no one else would have admitted the possibility that someone else had
Seen so, or
saw so,
caught a glimpse now and then of something
slippery,
back through the air.
white and vague.
like a slow, cold fog creeping across an evening after
A burial.
Linda Kite sent us.
storyteller packing with his long box of black angles. And leave,
He did in the aftermath of the blizzard.
Even if no one saw him
go. The social worker had loaded the children.
into the van, only to discover it wouldn't start.
Chintana jumper cables didn't help.
The county clerk called the tow truck.
Someone then remarked that the night felt wide and
Deserted.
without creature.
Or comparison.
Rod of wood and mud mute.
The ken was empty. Not even a wing flinging its shady,
Whisper over field.
Void of paw print, step,
or even moon. In the kitchen, a caterer informed a just arriving
and very hairy schoolteacher that the children had left.
long ago to which this very late
Teller of stories.
the only one Mose Dettleson had hired
Sighed heavily, abandoning at last his plans for animals and
Stormy nights in favor of a bowl of spaghetti, far, far.
a wedge of pear tart.
and eventually a deep glass of scotch, all while he cursed his.
Sedan in the early freeze,
Mose still managing to make the caterer giggle with limericks about.
cutting the cheese.
But the caterer was wrong. The children hadn't
Left just yet.
and as mine died,
Midnight.
midnight.
Just as midnight approached, they were
Upstairs again in the storytelling room, waiting for the ride.
Revoluting against sleep, peering down at the guests gustering about outside.
in the snow on the
back patio,
where with most of the caterers
cut loose hours ago, a skeleton crew did their best to fast encore
bottles of sugary champagne and
Fill brim high all those planet goblets.
Somewhere someone began to sing.
none of that, thank you.
Belinda Kite snapped.
Just raise up the bubbly and choke.
It bad. Happy birthday to me, spoken will do.
The woman with topaz clamped on her ears was the first to scoop a second.
Phil, no doubt to take the edge off.
Many were very drunk, but no one was cut off
Chintana, without a glass
of anything,
To fortify herself against the biting cold, didn't know.
what to make of why everyone else
including herself, had agreed to stand outside. Belinda Kite, because she claimed to adore the snow, had demanded her.
chose to take place in it. And for some reason,
Everyone obliged, though Chintana could not see many liked it, and even less like her.
focusing instead on the
Champagne, the clicking of plastic on
Planet rim.
anything and everything but.
Belinda.
And then swiftly by swiftly, as the moments edged closer to midnight.
Closer ever to Belinda Kite's
50th birthday.
50th.
Chintana with whirls of
Butterflies suddenly panicking inside her. So.
Sunflower Wild began to understand something she could not have prepared herself for. No matter Belinda Kite had desecrated everything that had mattered to her.
Everything that had made sense. No matter. Chintana now moved through light and stream a grave.
By tints of indecent rage.
Chintana still chose not to abandon Belinda Kite.
And so as seconds,
flickered seconds.
on seconds,
From 12,
like long violet lashes,
Chintana forced herself from the promise of infliction's peace. It was, after all,
all Chintana had of her. In fact, it was all Belinda Kite
had of herself.
That once ago frail embroidery her fingers had
Nimbly and tenderly.
Stitched and bled upon, finding in grassy thread the shape of
that single harvester with dark orange wings,
long gone,
and by which Chintana could now clearly find,
remembering it,
recovering it,
reminding it.
releasing it, as she had immediately remembered when
Pravat had at last handed it over to her. This is what hurt so much.
no deceit at all, but the reach only of
And from a longing in already parting woman,
a reach
which tonight
from this same woman.
had also saved 5 children from the murder of
Fate. And so Chintana tried hard to keep breathing, even as her thumb throbbed terribly and a solitary tear
sliced down her cheek.
Which was when clock hands across Upshur County finally.
clasped limply around midnight and said goodbye, which was when Belinda Kite caught sight of Chintana coming apart.
Figuratively,
With the tears, that is.
ensnared.
Baby, your hubby was a lousy fuck.
From their window, the children were the first to see the snow splash.
Red.
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 Even before Belinda Kite.
Knew what was happening before she could make sense of them.
Muffled screams and recoil suddenly unrounding her as she.
Right on the spot, literally.
Went to pieces.
Tart.
An idea.
Bicket,
His aid and
Sippus, saw all 5 fingers slide away and tumble to the ground.
In a soundless spray of blood.
But even as slices of joints and nails scattered apart on the frosty